Hello, and welcome back, adventurers. Get comfy, and let me tell you about the history of Valachan and how one man has been controlling it for well over a century. Although the two groups share no ethnic ties, Valachani have a few tenuous cultural threads in common with the Kharkov. Primarily, they make little distinction between myth and history. Highly social people, the Valachani's rich oral history is preserved in both immutable rituals and less rigidly preserved folk tales. Deep in Valachani's false history, a nameless race of dark-skinned hunters inhabited the primeval forest, perfectly at one with nature. Yutu the Provider, depicted as partway between a human adept and a fey god, lived among them, maintaining the natural balance of the forest with his magic and fey servants. Sometime around 320 Baron calendar, a 10th kinfolk the Valachani called the Vasi appeared out of the mists and embarked on a terrible war called the Pacification. Over the next 20 years, the Vasi slaughtered hundreds of natives and enslaved hundreds more. The Vasi also arrived carrying white fever. This was a minor illness for their people, but with no resistance, countless natives lost their lives to the disease. Each act of devastation opened a new wound in Yuto's body. The god was supposedly unable to stop the devastation because the Vasi lived outside nature, where he had no power. Finally, the panther, most cunning of animals, discovered the only way Yuto could save his realm. Yuto sacrificed himself to bring both sides to harmony, merging the two races into one. The newly created Valachani possessed the independence and wilderness skills of the natives, and the language, complex society and tendency towards tyrannical governments of the Vasi. Valachan's confused theology maintains that Yuto is indisputably dead, but still conscious and able to guide his followers. Supposedly, Yuto departed Valachan for the moon, and the Valachani were left as a scattering of city-states for more than 2 centuries. And this is when von Kharkov's story begins. The Baron started life as a panther in an outlander world, but his life changed with the emergence of a powerful wizard, Morpheus, who conceived of an elaborate plot for revenge against Selena, a woman who spurned his advances. Morpheus used a rare polymorphic magic to transform a panther into a full-grown man, naming his creation Baron Urik von Kharkov. Morpheus arranged for Urik and Selena to have frequent chance encounters. The pair became lovers, and when the two were locked in a lover's embrace, Morpheus dispelled the magic that maintained Urik's humanity. The savage panther tore Selena to shreds. Morpheus bestowed human form upon Urik, not expecting the panther to remember his prior human incarnation. Urik, horrified by the uncontrollable beast within him, escaped from the wizard and fled the country, burning with hatred and humiliation. He stumbled into a bank of fog, emerging in Darkon, where a bard told him legends of Azalin's vampiric secret police. Urik sought out a vampire to induct him into the ranks. In Undeath, Urik desired not just power and immortality, but control over the panther. What he received was 20 years of slavery to a Kargat master. When his master was killed, Urik fled into the Misty Border. In 625 Baron calendar, the Dark Powers embraced him, granting him his own domain of Valachan that was at the time ruled by a tyrannical baron. Urik's hatred towards the man quickly attracted von Oslin's attention. Von Kharkov was arrested, beaten, and dragged before the baron. A common myth holds that von Kharkov was destined to be victorious. As the bonds inexplicably fell from von Kharkov's arms, he immediately leaped forwards and broke the ancient baron's neck. Von Kharkov assumed the barony. In a sign of divine approval, the mists parted to the north, revealing Valachan's neighbors in those days, Invidia, Gundarak, and Kardakas. The well-loved Urik von Kharkov ruled for 51 years from von Oslin's old castle, which he converted and renamed Castle Pantara. During this period, he created a private army, the Black Leopards, and gave the mayors of Halbeni, Kortvold, and Ungrad a seat on his council for them to air their grievances. Urik of the time was by no means an even-tempered or kind man, but compared to his predecessor, he ruled lightly, so long as his rule was respected, his taxes paid, and his privacy left inviolate. All this came to an end in 671 BC, when he was allegedly killed by the Cat of Volkovic, a magic statue created by a mad wizard. Posing as his own son, Urik II ruled slightly more capriciously than his father, even instituting a bridal lottery to find a wife. These women invariably die of white fever, run away, or simply disappear within a year, prompting an unloved tradition of near-annual lotteries. Urik's biggest mistake is likely the appointment of Lady Adeline, a sadistic foreign elf, as a chief tax collector. Her vile behavior sparked several revolts between 680 and 730 Barovian calendar, which quickly spiraled into protest over the work levies at Castle Pantara, the lottery, and Urik's oppressive taxation. All uprisings were brutally stamped out, and their leaders made into grisly examples. The most recent revolt occurred in 740 BC, notable because it almost succeeded. Urik barely survived a magical assassination attempt. As he was struck down, terrible earthquakes shook Valachan. The country was physically wrenched away from its bed south of Siphicus and slumped into its current position. This event was taken as another sign from Uto that the von Kharkov dynasty is divinely appointed to rule. Thank you so much for your time, patient listeners. Now that you know a bit more about the Baron, I hope you will think twice before risking his audience. But if you have any business in Valachan, be careful while crossing the mists.